when you look at the near-term and longer-term, I guess, action needed to get off Russian gas and oil, what kind of timeline are we looking at?
I think it's going to be a long timeline to really change the power market in Europe. Today we're dependent on fossil fuels and nuclear to drive most of the baseload generation, and the technology to deliver renewable power and to store it both in the short and long term is not here today. But the investment is going to grow significantly across Europe in the next 10, 20, 30 years to build out all of the different technologies.
So when and how can Europe actually become dependent on its own energy? If you're talking a timeline of 10, 20, 30 years, that's a very long way off. How should we deal with Russian oil and gas in the medium term?
I think it's a difficult question, and although it's a terrible situation in Ukraine, it does bring to the fore the question around security of energy supply in Europe. If I look at the renewables, the pace of investment in renewables, it has to increase significantly because that's one of the areas where Europe can become more self-sufficient. And so I think with our company, we're positioned to grow in the Nordics. The Nordics has got a significant pipeline of opportunities and growth, and we see that across Europe. The broader discussion around Russian gas, I think, is something that'll be completely different to our company. But it certainly brings us to the fore in this position where you do have security of supply issues across Europe.
So are you expecting some projects to be sped up, and by how much?
I think in Europe you're going to see the legislation change a little bit more to be more amenable to development in renewables. And so in the core areas where you have the high demand, you have to see the regulation change to allow the permitting and the support for renewables grow. And I think that's where we're strongly positioned. This company comes out after we merge the oil and gas assets with Aker BP. We end up with 3 high-quality assets in some of the best priced regions in the Nordics, and we come out with no debt and significant cash flow from the business. And so our view is to help Europe through that transition in a small way by continuing to invest in both established and emerging technologies to generate more renewable power.
Mr. Fitzgerald, when you look at some of the gas prices, I mean, here in the UK, they are soaring. In Europe, even more, given the dependency to Russia. I mean, how much chaos, actually, will we see in energy markets in the next couple of weeks and months? And how will that feed through some of the operations?
Yeah, I think you're set for a fairly turbulent time. While you have CO2 pricing, and we shouldn't forget that, CO2 pricing growing in Europe, underinvestment in oil and gas, the Russia situation and a lack of gas in Europe, you have a market that's going to be high in power price. And that's going to stay in Europe with some of the structural changes that are coming. And so for us as a company, we are going to be spot market exposed to power price because I think in the medium to long term, as you've got these expensive emerging technologies coupled with underinvestment in oil and gas, I think you have the fundamentals for a strong market on power pricing. And with some of the onshore technologies, they're the cheapest technologies to put in place today.
But the oil market is pretty chaotic already. Are we going to see some huge revisions going forward?
I think if you look back at the last 1 or 2 years, you've seen huge volatility going from the lows of COVID to the highs of today. I think you'll see that continuing. The fundamentals, if you look a little bit longer term and see through some of the short-term volatility, I think the fundamentals are a lack of investment in the oil and gas space, which is structurally going to drive pricing higher. And until you see significant penetration and stability of renewables in Europe, you're going to see that volatility coming into the power markets and the upwards push on power prices to continue.
But you've worked for many years at Shell's upstream business based in the UK, so you understand the non-renewable side to this as well. How many years of chaos are we looking at?
I don't know how many years of chaos are we going to see in geopolitics. So there's many factors in the oil market. I think you probably, everyone can take their own view on it. For me, I think structurally you've got underinvestment and a lack of supply coming at some point in the future, even as demand starts to shrink at some point. So I don't see a future, certainly in the next 5 to 10 years, where we see low pricing in either power or oil and gas commodity space.